Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands responds to that nurses' sickout.
The Prime Minister addressed his plans to resolve the concerns of nurses.
The government releasing more information on the white paper designed to affect those living in over-the-hill communities.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, the country's public health care system was nearly brought to its knees, according to Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands, who confirmed that more than 100 nurses from various clinics across New Providence and at least 2 family islands called in sick today. Sands says the actions of those nurses put the lives of many people at risk. Jasmine Brown reports.
The health minister says that Sickout blindsided the government and crippled an already struggling healthcare system.
It is very clear, given the coincidence around the country, that this is an industrial action. It has put the lives and health of a lot of people at risk.
According to Sands, SANDILANDS Rehabilitation Center was hardest hit, with 50 nurses calling in sick. Approximately 30 nurses called in sick at PMH, while fewer than 20 nurses stationed at the Rand Memorial Hospital in Grand Bahama failed to show up for work. Clinics in New Providence also suffered critical shortages, with 14 nurses at Elizabeth Estates Clinic and 8 nurses at South Beach Clinic calling in sick. Only 1 nurse showed up at the Fleming Street Clinic. Additionally, 80% of nurses on Marsh Harbor Abaco called in sick today.
The public health care system is already stretched to capacity, and we are obliged to manage as best as possible. And so what we're going to have to do is to ensure that at least emergency services are provided. Unfortunately, the people that are paying the biggest price for this are the long-suffering people of the Bahamas. And it is really, really, really unfortunate that elective surgeries have had to be canceled. Clinics have had to be shut down, essentially. And the people being aggravated, the people being annoyed, the people being inconvenienced and potentially hurt are the people of the Bahamas.
The sickout comes as public health care facilities continue to grapple with a critical shortage of nurses. Health officials have estimated the Bahamas is in dire need of 528 registered nurses and 140 trained clinical nurses. It also comes amid tensions between the Bahamas Nurses Union and the Public Hospitals Authority. Earlier this month, BNU President Amancia Williams accused the PHA of instituting union-busting tactics and revealed that the union intended to apply to the Department of Labor for permission to hold a strike vote over a dispute with the PHA regarding a shift system. Williams said the union was concerned that expatriate nurses on contracts were asked to work 12-hour shifts.
Great effort has been made to maintain the lines of communication, to have the ability to air and ventilate these concerns and to negotiate a meaningful compromise on behalf of the Bahamian people. The Director of Labor has been actively involved, as has been the Department of Labor, and at no time has there been any effort spared to bring these matters to resolution.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Some patients turned up at clinics across New Providence from as early as 5:30 this morning, only to be turned away. They're now calling for something to be done.
We register and everything. Now, when we listen, they come say, you have to reschedule your appointment for another day or 2 or what have you. Those with triage numbers, they had to leave because they were not dealing with them.
Moss says she and her husband arrived at the Fleming Street Clinic around 5:30 this morning, registered and waited, only to learn there was an issue with the nurses at the clinic.
They were coming in the place was full, and they was full from this morning, and then they just let them know that, they wouldn't be seeing today, and they had to leave and go home.
Over at the Elizabeth Estates Clinic, patients faced a similar situation.
What was your experience like when you went to the clinic this morning?
Well, I just nobody, just no one in there to serve you.
Val Stirrup says when she arrived for her 10:30 appointment, she learned there were no nurses, something she says will no doubt impact hundreds of patients.
Oh yeah, and it's wrong. It would affect people, because the people's lives. I mean, some people need dressing, you know. Well, the thing is, they giving the people who need dressing and they giving them the stuff. So, I don't know. But it's sad. They have to do something about it.
Shivargo Brown had no issue seeing a private doctor, but he saw people leaving in droves, turned away or rescheduled due to the lack of nurses at the Elizabeth Estates Clinic.
We just came to see the private doctor, but they said that no nurses were coming in, so everyone just started to go and left, and no nurses came back. Yeah, I was concerned because, I mean, I thought, you know, we said not too, but when our doctor came, you know, we went to him, but everyone else left.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis says he has spoken with the president of the Bahamas Nurses Union, and he expects those nurses to be back on the job tomorrow. Giorgio Bain has that angle.
While dozens of nurses called in sick during scheduled working hours today, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis says he's already met with the necessary authorities to get the problems fixed. And while they cannot resolve all of the issues, they're working to resolve most of them.
I spoke with the nursing union president this morning, just before I came here, and they had some issues that are not being resolved, including the scheduling. And I've assured her that the scheduling, I've spoken to my minister, and the scheduling should be placed on hold, and the whole issue of the ministry, the personnel and the nurses union should now meet so that we can come to an amicable resolution. And we had a very good conversation, and I think the nurses should be back tomorrow.
According to the Prime Minister, they are prepared to work on a resolution to these issues.
They would enter discussions, meeting with the relevant authority to come to a complete resolution as much as we can. I know that there are other outstanding matters, presumably with others, non-nursing personnel, but as government, we will address as many as we can. Unfortunately, you cannot resolve everything overnight.
According to Minnis, who is an OBGYN, he knows firsthand what it's like to run a hospital without nurses.
When I practiced medicine a long time ago, the nurses went on industrial unrest, and the hospital was then ran by the physicians. The nurses withdrawing their services. It was then that all of us doctors appreciated how important the nurses are to the healthcare. Because after 48 hours of us doctors working non-stop, we could not function any longer, and we had to inform the government that they must get the nurses back to work.
Reporting for our News, I'm Giorgio Bain.
Amid growing calls for the Prime Minister to make a decision on the substantive Chief Justice, Dr. Minnis asserted today no one can force him to do anything. Prominent members of the legal fraternity, including the Bahamas Bar Association president and even the Minister of State for Legal Affairs, have called on Minnis to name a substantive CJ, warning the delay puts the country in an existential and constitutional crisis. However, Minnis, who held belated birthday celebrations at Gambier Primary School, was not fazed.
Travis, I've said all I want to say about the Chief Justice. Nobody is going to force me to do anything, okay? Full stop.
But any timeline?
Listen, I've said what I want to say. I'm finished with that subject. Anything else? Thank you very much, Travis. Wish me a happy birthday.
The Governor General appoints the Chief Justice on the recommendation of the Prime Minister after consultation with the Leader of the Opposition. Senior Justice Stephen Isaacs was appointed Acting Chief Justice in December after former Chief Justice Sir Hartman Longley was appointed President of the Court of Appeal. Well, the government gets over $5 million a year in taxes from the Bain and Grantstown community, according to the Director of Economic Planning and Development in the Office of the Prime Minister. She made this revelation as she explained the many benefits residents and businesses within that community should receive as a result of the government's over-the-hill development plan. Kyle Joaquin has more.
Once the new budget year begins in July, residents and business owners in Bain and Grantstown, an area which reportedly contributes some $6 million in taxes annually, should begin feeling the benefits of government's over-the-hill rejuvenation program. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis last week tabled the white paper, which contains numerous tax exemptions and benefits for residents and businesses with an aggregate turnover of $5 million or less.
It removes customs duty for certain types of goods. But what we want to do is just really encourage people to reinvest in their properties. And so we do have the flexibility to look through, and if something doesn't make sense anymore, we can go back and say through regulation that we may need to add something else.
Gaming houses and those that sell alcohol do not qualify. Director of Economic Planning and Development in the Office of the Prime Minister, Dr. Nicola Virgil Rhodes, says there's no number on how high of an exemption rate one can get.
If you wanted to do an improvement to your home, for example, we can pay for the materials to construct. It's not going to cover furnishings, but it's going to deal with construction or things to equip your business, things like that.
The project not only speaks to tax exemptions, but also smart technology, green and sustainable technology, as well as programs for the youth and the elderly. There are also plans to deal with perceived fraud.
For example, for customs violations, that's a normal part of a process where the Comptroller of the Customs can investigate any perceived fraud and misdoing for things like customs regulations. So we will piggyback off the existing investigative powers of the Ministry of Finance and Inland Revenue.
The first phase covers the Bain and Grantstown community and a portion of Centerville. Rhodes said that decision was made after careful assessment of which area would be most in need first. Centerville MP Reese Chipman.
However, Centerville does plan to have a strategic paper for the constituency itself that will be aligned with the action plan.
But what about the other communities?
As the program is advancing and showing the merits and the benefits, then it will flip over to Robinson Road. So we'll take that quadrant down and then flip out as well.
Now, a draft of the white paper was put out in newspapers this morning as a way to educate the public on it. The committee also has a town hall meeting planned for Wednesday night at 7 p.m. at C.L. Walker Senior High School. Reporting for our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
In other news, despite OBAN Chair Peter Krieger's pledge to have an environmental impact assessment for the oil refinery project on Grand Bahama completed in 45 days, that deadline has now passed and the company has asked for more time to complete the study. OBAN said the 45-day deadline applied to the first of 3 phases of that EIA, but the government has asked the company to complete all phases and submit the impact study in its entirety. When asked today about OBAN's delay in submitting an EIA, the Prime Minister, who's the minister responsible for the BEPS Commission, said he had no information on the EIA or the project's progress.
No, I don't have any update. There's a particular committee dealing with that entire matter. I have no update for you.
Any update in general about the project?
No, I have no update.
The $5.5 billion project has been the subject of intense scrutiny and controversy, from the revelation that Krieger signed someone else's name on the heads of agreement to concerns raised by just about every major environmental group in the country. However, Minnis insisted today East Grand Bahama's pristine environment will not be put in jeopardy.
There are certain things that has to be met, and I've said then, and I say again, our environment will not be compromised. Our environment will always be protected.
Still to come on our news, Ragged Island still reeling from the effects of Hurricane Irma. Plus, GHS honors 6 of its outstanding alumni. That's coming up when our news returns.